Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin We the Species. Before I even go any further, I was now told by the people who work with me to tell everybody to subscribe. Subscribe to the channel. That's how this thing grows, and it just helps. Um, and by the way, it's New Year's Eve day, and I'm with Caden Drummeller, and we're both wearing Rutgers stuff.
There we
That's because
go.
we're both Rutgers people, and I'm so comfortable wearing my Rutgers sweatshirt today. I've been looking forward to this, and this is a special. It's a really unusual, special, dynamic interview. Something I love doing, working with Rutgers students. I'm, a full-time mentor, and I have to tell you how Caden and I met. It wasn't that long ago. It was in November. There was a dinner that was sponsored by Future Business Leaders of America. It was part of the administration of that was Aditi whom I mentor. And to support Aditi, I was invited to go to that dinner, and I went to that dinner. It's a networking event, and there was Caden, and we talked. And when he told me that he was involved with the men's basketball team, my ears went like that. Are you kidding? Of course, I've been sitting in the rack for give or take 30 years, and I've seen it all. I've seen it all. So anything with men's basketball is near and dear to me. And of course, Caden is involved with that, doing media stuff for the men's basketball team. So that was the beginning. And then the light bulb went off while I'm talking to Caden, and I see his energy and I see all that stuff, that passion, that energy. And I said, hey, we ought to just kind of chat because I'd love to interview you. I mean, that's close to my heart. And that's how it began. And of course, at every men's basketball game, Caden came over in the chat. We chatted, and now here we are on New Year's Eve day, and we're going to do a really insightful, really special interview because the stuff we're going to talk about, from NIL up and down, and the work he's done in high school broadcasting. I mean, this is all state-of-the-art stuff. It's interesting. It's life, and we know the impact NBA has on our culture and our society, and Caden is involved in all that. Although he's not necessarily a journalism major, and he'll talk about that. So this is really special, and I'm glad that Caden took some time out. Uh, he's on break for a while, and I really look forward. I've been looking forward to this because it's Rutgers. We're both wearing our Rutgers. I didn't tell him to wear that; he wore it on his own.
All
So
by myself.
all by himself, me and my hat and stuff. So, why don't you just say a couple of, just a little intro, and then we're going to do some probing stuff. I mean, it's a young life. You're only 19. I interview people in their 50s and 40s and 60s and 70s and 80s. So it's a young life, but quite accomplished in such a short period of time. I'm done with my monologue. Why don't you do a little intro, Caden?
Yeah, so, in relevant to what we're going to be talking about today, my media or my broadcasting journey started off, I guess, 5 years ago now when I went to high tech high school over in Secaucus, New Jersey. It's a vocational school, which means you choose an area of study to focus on when you first go in. So I had plenty of options. There's engineering, there's more, STEM focused, there's dance, there's theater. So there's so many things that these kids who are 14, 15 years old can choose to go into. And I saw broadcasting, I saw that as an option. I knew I had a love for sports, and it stuck out to me right away as something that I thought, I could excel in. So that's what I did. And then I had classes throughout my 4 years. And when I came in, there wasn't much of a sports broadcasting program. It was more focused on, the kids there filming podcasts, talking with each other, and learning kind of the core communication skills that come with doing that. And what I did is and a few of my, coworkers and teachers, we kind of came together and started streaming basketball games that were happening at our school. And it was really tough getting started because our high school doesn't have sports teams. So,
Oh,
and
wow.
we have a big venue for basketball, but we don't have sports teams. So we'll host sometimes neutral site events. And what kind of got us started was the Hudson County championships were held there, and we had some big stars, some people that are playing at the highest level of, college basketball right now, coming through that gym and playing there. So we got a great start. There were so many people we could, talk to, and I was calling these games, and it grew, as I went through the process, as I went through my years, and by senior year, I had started this show, and it's something that I still work with now. It's called HCST Athletics. I co-founded it with my partner Manny. And what our goal was when we started that, we wanted to do some big project for our senior year. We knew this was something that we were into, and we wanted to be what was basically the ESPN of Hudson County high school sports. So we founded that, and that's kind of what we do now. It's what we did last year, and we had it got bigger than anything we ever imagined, viewership wise. And we interview players. We have great relationships with all of them now. We go to these games at these schools, and we'll stream it. We'll call the games, and we'll post, graphics, stats, whatever it is. And we've really, helped, I think, bring this community of, people that do all kinds of sports in Hudson County together. And, I'm just so grateful for the relationships that
Yeah.
has brought. And it's just awesome. And then coming here, this is my first year here at Rutgers, and I was fortunate enough to get in contact with our sports information director. Um, and he said, they needed somebody to help with social media content for the team, and notably, TikTok and short form videos and stuff like that. And that's where I found a place, and I've been doing that now for a few months. I started, in the preseason, going to basketball tailgates and at the football games, or, whatever it is, meet the team nights, stuff like that. And, you know, now we're in season, we're doing the games, and it's been a blast so far.
Okay. By the way, I think I mentioned to you when we started connecting, and I went. I forgot where I went, but I went online and I watched you and Manny do a game. And I watched whatever. I guess you sent me a link, and I watched it, and I'm saying to myself, you're not Shaq and Barkley that paved the way for amazing stuff on ESPN. But I couldn't believe how professional and how poised you guys were doing that kind of a show. I was really, really impressed. And also, people don't know, Hudson County basketball, has achieved national notoriety. Of course, we know why. Bobby Hurley and Coach Hurley, who made national headlines. So Hudson County is, a mecca of high school basketball, and truly. And listen, Coach of UConn came out of that. You know, uh,
Yeah.
and I don't know, people don't realize that. All Americans came out of that, as you just alluded to. So, but anyway, I did watch you and Manny, and I was very impressed. So, um, you're young. Did you have any kind of yeah, you are young. Do you have any kind of influences like journalism and broadcasters, photographers, anybody that you could like touch and relate to?
Yeah. I'm gonna say someone who a lot of people might not know. He does some national football games, but I guess most notably he's the announcer of the Philadelphia Phillies for NBC Sports Philadelphia, Tom McCarthy has been who took over for Harry Callis back when I was
Sure.
too young to remember that. And he was kind of always who I watched as a kid. I would have been a Phillies fan since I was 4 or 5 years old, and that's always been kind of the main sport that I've taken a liking to. I played it for a while, and I loved, going to games with my dad and all that stuff. And so I would just hear him for hours on end, every year I'd say, yeah, and for 161 games, you'd sit down and you'd listen to him. And I started imitating his home run call when I was like
Well, that's funny.
super, super young. And it was a point where,
Funny.
when I would see family or whatever, they'd ask me to do it so they could, hear me try to do it. And, being a sports broadcaster wasn't even in the back of my mind then. It was just something that kind of caught my eye. And I guess that if I had to go back, that's really the first person that kind of brought me into it. And I've had the privilege of meeting him actually um, in Cincinnati a few years ago. And we were able to chit chat for a little bit about broadcasting and if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's from Hudson County as well.
Wow. Wow.
Um, and it was cool to meet him, and he's definitely a big inspiration for me.
That's kind of unusual. You're a Hudson County guy, and you're a Phillies fan. When you got the Yankees and Mets right over the river. Um, Whatever. Hey, I'm not an Eagles fan, but I like the Eagles. And as a matter of fact, the guy who put the Eagles together, Howie Roseman,
Howie Roseman, yep.
the guy who put the Eagles together lived a few blocks away from here, and he went to my son's high school, Marlboro High School, and he always had a dream, just like you have a dream. He always had a dream. He wanted to get involved in the NFL, and he kept pursuing it and pursuing it. He's a young guy. I mean, he's older than you, but he's a young guy, and he was the brains that put that amazing team together and won a Super Bowl. Um,
Absolutely. I think we have one of the best, front offices in all of sports, to be
yeah,
honest.
correct. And I don't know, people realize just how important that is. It's really important, a front of all of that, and a vision, which he had. Okay, so now you're at Rutgers. You got involved with the Rutgers men's basketball team. Um, Tell me about some of those experiences that you've had early on, doing that men's basketball. And I see you at work with your camera because I sit pretty close to the court and I kind of watch you. I mean, the environment there is so electric. It wasn't always that way. And I've been sitting in that rack, 25, 30 years, and it used to be half filled for most of the
Yeah,
time. That's how I was able to get seats almost on the court because nobody wanted to go. I did because I'm loyal to Rutgers. But so, what are some of your uh, takeaways and some of the fun things you've been doing with men's basketball?
well, I think when I started out, or more specifically when the season started out, it was kind of surreal because you're just like you said, it's a packed stadium. It's one of the loudest stadiums, in the Big Ten. And with the access that I have, I'm on the court and I'm right in the middle of all that. So, you look around and you're just surrounded by all these people and this amazing production that's put on by all these people behind the scenes. And it's kind of just like, whoa, like I'm here and I get to be a part of this. And it's so rewarding and so fulfilling to know, you know, no matter how small yeah, I contribute to this, in a way. And then the actual work, of course, is super cool as well. Yeah, I get to interact with all these players who, are pouring their heart out into this team and doing so much work to to make these games and be competitive in these games. And so, everything about it, it's unique. It's a, it's an experience not a lot of people get to have,
Correct.
and I'm just so grateful for it.
Correct. I mean, the environment, and I've seen, like I said, I've seen the environment go from being half empty to sold out, and all that electricity. It started when Pikel came here, and then he put together some amazing teams from scratch. I mean, nobody even heard of these guys who were coming here, more or less. You know, Ron Harper Jr. and Geo Baker and Jacob Young, and these guys were as good as they got. I mean, it's interesting. You said how loud the rack is. I don't know how accurate this statement I'm going to make, but I had heard through the grapevine years ago that when they built that rack back in the 70s, uh, the architecture, I could be wrong, but maybe I'm not. The architecture, it's kind of a geometric shape. So it goes up and kind of angles. And in the world of sound, when the sound goes up, and because of the way it's shaped, the sound, people, yelling and screaming, has nowhere to go. So it comes back
Yeah.
down and it makes it that much louder. Um, Kate, do you feel any kind of pressure doing the stuff you're doing in yes, Division One, but also not only is it Division One, but it's Big Ten, which may be the best basketball conference as it stands right now. Do you feel you're under pressure doing what you're doing?
To be honest, not a whole lot, and I feel very fortunate to say that, and I say that because there's so many people that are working with me that, I feel like, they're always there to back me up, and we're never gonna have some catastrophic failure. But and not to belittle myself at all here, but at the end of the day, I'm an intern there. I'm not a full-time employee, and there are a lot of full-time employees at the team that I work with, and they're all phenomenal, and they love what they do, and they pour their heart into it. And so I know they're always there for me if there's something I have a question on, if there's something that I mess up on, that they're going to be there and I can talk to them, and that makes it, that takes the pressure off, and it just makes the job so much more fun because I feel like I can let loose, I can, try new things and be creative, and that's resulted in some really cool content that we've put out.
Okay. Doing what you're doing, it helps you develop skills. And even sometimes you're not even aware, subliminally, subconsciously, you have to develop skills, like storytelling and camera work, and interviewing and being interviewed. Do you feel what you're doing has helped you with skill sets?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I look at myself, let's go back, 5 years to when I first started this, and probably even more recently than that. My conversation skills and my level of confidence when I was talking to people is nowhere near, not even close to what it's at today. I think, I now hold conversations very well. I can ask people questions. I can go up to someone and start a conversation, and that really wasn't something I was able to do before this, and it forced me kind of out of my shell, and I had to talk to new people. I had to take on a lot of new experiences that all, no matter what you're doing at heart, they're communications based, whether it's camera facing or not. And that makes you a more social, a more energetic, I think, and just a more fun person to be around. And I see that, in my professional life, but in my social life as well. I'm more confident, and I speak more thoroughly. I convey ideas better, and I think that's a skill that I'm going to use anywhere.
Okay. You'll find the more you do and the more you jump in and the more it's all a training thing. Here I am interviewing people now all over the world, literally, in so many different I mean, academics and author. I mean, all over I mean, literally. And it's funny because when I was in my previous career as an eyeglass regional manager, part of my job was every Christmas I had to get in front of 500 people and talk about my region. And that was always over, like a week before Christmas. And so when June came along, I started to freeze up and worry. I got to get in front of 500 people. And so I had all this agita and I couldn't do it. And it was such a mess. For 6 months, I thought about I have to get in front of 500 people. So that was then, and this is now, and I don't have a problem, talking to anybody.
Yeah.
So what you just said, it's a process of growing and learning and gaining the confidence. It's all, you just don't, generally speaking, you don't jump into it. You grow into it, which is what you're doing. And the skills you're learning now and you're growing into now, they're gonna follow you all your days. Away from quote the journalism and the sports, it might take you into finance and accounting. These skills because they're with you. So, um, you've been a broadcaster, and now you do lots of photography. Do they in any way complement each other? Do you think?
Well, I think they're, you know, inherently very close because the goal with anything media related is to tell a story. So you're just doing that in a slightly, well, I'm not going to say slightly. It's a very different way of doing it. You can't speak when you're doing photography. When I call a game, I can introduce the players, I can show stats, whatever it is that I think is, the most appropriate thing to do. And with a camera, you kind of have to do all that by, maybe showing a player's facial expressions, trying to capture emotion in one way or another. So, at the heart of it, it's a storytelling thing, but there's very different ways you go about that.
Okay. Um, it's interesting. I'm holding this up. Um, I am an old-fashioned guy, and I've been a journalist for 15 years with NJ Discover. I've taken a couple 100,000 pictures. I have a Canon camera, which I love, 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 and everybody keeps telling me, my son, this does the work. This is great. And then I remember when I was doing my journalism, I was hanging around a guy named Jack, and he was doing a story in a homeless encampment where 125 people were homeless and lived in tents. And he decided to make a documentary film about the lives of those people. And he did it with this. And and guess what? I went to the premiere and it was amazing. And but anyway, I just wanted to interject that because it's such a new world, of technology and the stuff. But I'm leading up to the next question. When you're shooting and filming, uh, is there um, is there something you're looking for in particular? What do you want to try to capture? Because I see you running around and you stop and I watch. Are you trying to capture anything in particular or like capture the flavor?
Well, I think at the end of the day, there's so many games, and there are a few, staple shots that you're always trying to get. So, I'm shooting for our Instagram story, so that's stuff that's going to get posted almost right after I shoot
Okay.
it,
Okay.
which means, there's not a lot of time for editing or whatever,
Right.
whatever it may be that we're trying to do. So, there's always, when they're warming up and they'll huddle and they'll put their hands in and have that kind of pregame, hype talk with each other, which is a great shot to get. But, when there's 30 games in a season, people don't want to see the same thing every single game. So, like I said, there are a few staple shots that I'll always try to get for every game, just so the people that are posting it have optionality on, what goes up. But I think a lot of the times you're kind of playing it by ear. You're looking for something more unique that doesn't happen every single game to give the fans, a different perspective or a different view. Because I think what a lot of people are looking for now, and you'll see it, when you scroll TikTok, is the more human aspects of the game. When the players are acting, you know, like normal people. They want to see personality. And I think that's something that I really try to go for.
Okay. Okay. Um, just going to go off topic for a second. I forewarned you I might do this. One of my favorite questions. You're a young guy, but I like asking this question. So, you don't have to answer it. It's no big deal. But excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead, you'd like to spend a day with.
Ooh,
Yeah, pretty cool question.
that is a good question.
Yes, it is. There could be a couple. There's no rules here.
Yeah, I'd like to spend a day with someone I think who's, like in this field specifically with someone who has, called some of the bigger games and worked with those larger production teams and who I think would be a just a cool person off of outside of their job. I think Ian Eagle would be a really cool person to chat with. He's called some great games. He has a great voice. Um, and he just seems like a cool dude. I don't know.
I
So
like
I
that
think
answer.
I think he'd be cool to
I
chat
like
with.
that answer.
I've talked to his son before actually, Noah Eagle, who calls some NFL games now as well. Um, and he was awesome. So yeah, I think to talk to his dad would be pretty cool.
Cool. Nice answer. I like that. I wrote it down. I wrote it down. Do you have any favorite movies?
This is what everybody always gets on me for. I don't watch that many movies. I don't
Okay,
know.
that's fine. That's fine.
I'm not a movie person. I watched Oppenheimer when it came out on the 72 millimeter IMAX in New York City,
Oh, wow.
which
That's a hell
was
of a place to see it. Yeah.
yeah, which was a super cool experience. So I'll go with that one because
Okay,
I
that's
loved every
fine.
second of it, and I got just the viewing experience was second to none. But other than that, that's the thing that
That's
people always
fine.
get at me for is
Hey,
I don't really watch movies.
I do because that's who I am. Listen, 20 years ago, 20 years ago, I couldn't play tennis. I'm a tennis player. I was a tennis player. I couldn't play tennis. It was raining and I had all this energy. So something from the universe came down and hit me and told me to go watch this old movie, Casablanca, which I've seen now probably 200 times. It's an obsession. And when I got done watching Casablanca, Humphrey Bogart, one of my favorite actors, shoots the bad guy. It's 1942 in Casablanca during the Second World War. And then Claude Rains, this wonderful character actor, picks up a bottle of Vichy water, which looks like this. It's French mineral water, like Perrier. And he looked at the label, and anything in 1942 with the word Vichy in it was a bad word. So he throws it in the garbage. And the second it hit the garbage, I grabbed my head and I yelled, "Oh my God!" And my wife said, "You were right. What happened?" I said, "There's a novel in my head." Now I never studied English at Rutgers. Everything was pharmacy, science, chemistry, and all that stuff. So something, from up there made me write this novel, which was published, 20 years ago, called Vichy Water. And it's all because of an old movie, which segues. You have an informal assignment. You want to watch one of the best sports movies I think that was ever made. It's a movie called Hoosiers. I don't know if you ever heard about it. Uh,
No.
no. Well, find it somewhere. It's always getting streamed somewhere. It's called Hoosiers, and it's a story of a 1951 or 52. It's a true story. by the way, a high school, Indiana high school basketball, which is like the capital of basketball,
Yeah.
Indiana basketball. My goodness. So it's a 1951-52, takes place with in the movie, it's called Hickory. Uh,
Okay.
in real life, it was called Milan, Milan, and the school only had 75 kids in the whole school, so they barely could put together a basketball team, and they did. And Gene Hackman in the movie was the coach, great actor. And as the story goes, it's so improbable. They had like seven kids on the team. That was it. It was so improbable, but they went through the whole, high school tournament thing, and they wound up playing. I'm trying to maybe it was South Bend, Indianapolis, whatever, a big school with like 2,000 kids, and Little Milan High School beat that monstrous high school and won the state championship in Indiana, and that's what that movie is about. But I watch it all the time, obsessively. Anyway, moving on now to an interesting subject, and to lead into the subject of NIL, which we're going to talk about. I want to tell you that about 10 years ago, I was an active member of the Rutgers Court Club. And this one meeting, they had a compliance guy from the NCAA to tell us as alums and supporters what we can do and what we can't do. So 10 years ago, they told us if you have a recruit on campus, you cannot, or it's a violation of the NCAA rules, you cannot buy that recruit a cup of coffee. That's what I was told 10 years ago. Not even a cup of coffee. Today, you can give the guy a Mercedes easy. So, and that's true. That's true and more. Maybe $1 million under the table. Everything is up front. But I couldn't, they told me you can't even buy a cup of coffee. So, we know NIL has changed a lot of things for college athletes, and you're aware of that. Um, how do you see NIL? How do you view it from like a student and media perspective?
Well, I'll start by touching on the first thing that everyone has to say about it, and is that I think a general consensus of a lot of people is that it's making the game worse. And I think, from a viewer perspective, that is a little bit hard to argue. You're especially for these teams that aren't, blue bloods, they may have a successful season or may have a player that plays very well, and it's almost a guarantee unless they're willing to shell out their whole budget on the guy next year that he won't be there anymore and he's going to transfer to somewhere where he can make more money and have a better chance of, getting viewed by scouts, whatever it is. But I think, the primary motivator, I think a lot of people believe is the cash. And I do believe that, that's true to some degree, but I think we have to look at what pros are coming from this, and there's a few, because it really is a win-win for these college athletes and the donors, because, these rich donors have clearly money that they're willing to spend, and I'm pretty confident when I say that these 19, 20-year-old college guys can use the money as well a lot, a lot maybe more efficiently than these donors can. So, they're willing to shell out the money. These players, it's life-changing for all of them when they're getting, six figures and, in some cases millions of dollars before they even graduate. And you look what their sacrifice is. A lot of them have to, maybe choose an easier and less desirable major to be able to cope with, doing that, and the amount of work that comes with being a part of a Big Ten or just a Division One in general basketball program. Even at the lower level, they all have the same amount of hours a week that they're allowed to practice and all that. So, this is a full-time job for them, and they are the best that are college eligible. So, it's hard for me to find a reason why they shouldn't be paid, especially, when during the games that they're playing, commercials are being run, Fox is there streaming it. Everybody else is seemingly making money from this.
Right, and not them.
So why aren't the players? And I think at the end of the day, that's the hardest point. That's the hardest thing for me to get by. And I think, that's where the struggle is. I can't ever say that these players shouldn't get paid when, they're the ones attracting all of this revenue. Why not? That's
I
ultimately
agree.
my take on it.
No, they my complaint is they went from in my lifetime, just a short decade ago, of not being able to buy a cup of coffee, to a couple of million a year on the other extreme. So they went from one extreme, no coffee, to millions. And I think and there's all and I agree that these players give their life and soul and heart and needed to be compensated and never were. They got a scholarship, they got free food, and they got a couple of donuts after a game. But I mean, seriously. But I just think there's got to be better balance. Uh, uh, um, I don't know how they're going to do that, and maybe Congress actually might have to step in and come up with something. But anyway, I just wanted your take on NIL, and I agree. These kids are amazing. Both genders, guys and gals, and they bring so much. And in particular, I've watched. I used to go to all the women's games as well. I traveled with the team whenever they went down to Philly. They were playing the NCAA, the women's team. I drove down to Philly, and I mean, I was a loyal son of Rutgers for all the sports. Women's, men's basketball. But it's changing, and I'm trying to process that change. Okay. Um, you're a young guy. Um, what do you think, kids your age and younger audience want from the institution of sports media today? What do you think young people want to get from sports media?
Well, I think a lot less kids are consuming sports media from their TVs, and it's all through their phone now. And I'm not saying that because they're watching ESPN on their TV and they're watching ESPN on their phone, that they're not tuning into ESPN as much as they were before. They're not watching MLB or NHL Network like they were before. They're watching 15 to 30-second clips on TikTok and Instagram, maybe a highlight, maybe a clip from a press conference, or something like that. But that's where they're getting their information from now. It's not sitting down for half an hour and watching a talk show. Those still exist, but I don't think they target maybe that age category. But that's what a lot of it's shifting to. It's all vertical content now. It's all how quick can you pack all the information in, and how stimulating can you make that 15 30-second clip, because you need the viewer retention to have the algorithm show it to more people. And it's all fast paced. And I think, you'll see if you look at ESPN's, TikTok account, it's not clips from Sports Center. It's random highlights, it's funny moments, it's a player mic'd up and saying something he shouldn't have. And that's just what it's become. It's gone from horizontal to vertical, and attention spans are shrinking, and sports media is trying to
Mm.
right now figure out a way, and all media is trying to figure out a way to cope with that.
Scary stuff. Scary stuff, and even the direction of student sports media, that's changing too. Your world is changing, and the content you're putting out is changing. Were you ever given directions, like from Rutgers, short, trying to capture like a flavor of a game? Do they give you marching instructions, or they allow it to your own creativity?
Well, I think a lot of, what my work is when it comes to actually, shooting videos that are going to be posted, on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, is a lot more maybe off the court stuff. So when it comes to games, it may be more just looking for specific highlights, or if one player has a good game, you make a little compilation of all the three-pointers he made, or the big flashy dunk, or whatever it is. But ultimately, the goal within, I think, the organization, and like I mentioned in my earlier question, is to make it quick. So you want, again, all the action you can take, and how quickly of a video can you pack it into, because the longer it is, the more chance that the 15-year-old watching it is just going to get bored and scroll on to the next one because it's one swipe away. So that's the name of the game, is video length, and how compact you can make a video while still telling, a complete story.
Okay. Yeah, I get I think I told you before we went there, I get a lot of feeds, basketball feeds because I love basketball. And some of the feeds I get, there was a whole bunch showing Steph Curry. Uh, a couple times he's walking into the tunnel to go to the locker room, and he takes a basketball and he heaves it with all his might down the whole length of the court, and it goes in. I mean, are you kidding me? You'd have to do that a million times to go in. But some of the feeds I get are not Steph Curry on the court making a shot. We all know he makes these amazing shots, but Steph Curry going over to a kid like before the game and autographing whatever the kid wanted autographed. But that kind of personalized touch, I get a kick out of that. And to me, it's good for the NBA to show the other side of these super athletes. So there's a lot of, I guess, change and growth and trying to come up with content, different content to grab people like me. All right, moving on, Caden. This is one of my favorite topics. I live and breathe it all day long. AI. As a 19-year-old, I kind of catch myself. As a 19-year-old, what do you think AI means for the future of journalism and sports broadcasting? Is AI going to mess around with that?
Well, I think what it works right now best as for the media space specifically is just a brainstormer. If there's, and I think the base of any, project ultimately has to be human, and it's going to look better if it's human based. So you got to have to you got to be able to write a good prompt. You have to, if you're talking to the AI and trying to, work with it maybe to generate ideas for something. But the foundation of it, you need to be able to come up with some basis, because otherwise you're going to get very generalized advice, and that will dry itself out very quickly if everyone's doing that. So you still have to kind of have your own angle that you want to present an idea with. And AI can certainly help structure that, and build maybe a storyline for someone like me to work with, but it can't do the entire job yet. It can downsize it. It can make it much more efficient, I think. But I think there's still some room for it to grow. And there's some aspects of it, like I said, that it won't be able to take over, because if it does, we're just going to see everybody everywhere posting the same exact content, and that's just not going to work.
You think AI can make it easier sometimes for you? You're a content creator, so AI. I started using AI. I make my own content when I'm promoting my interviews, promoting my books that I've written. And literally 2 weeks ago, I said, I wonder what AI can do. And I prompted and I got a couple different programs, and just as an experiment, I threw this stuff into AI and it spit out some really good posters and content. and I started using them, and it's really interesting. And I'm not I'm very leery about as you are, but the fact that it created such professional looking posters that I was looking at the thumbs up responses before I was using AI, and now the professionalism of AI, and these thumbs up things tripled. It's like, oh wow, because it looks, like it came from Madison Avenue in New York, and it kind of bothered me. I mean, it didn't bother me that I'm getting triple the impressions and triple the thumbs up, but it bothered me that AI did it and I didn't. Um,
Yeah.
um, uh, so are you excited about the world of AI, or are you cautious?
I mean, I think, when it comes to media right now, like I said, it's a brainstormer and it's nothing more than that yet. I still have to go out and shoot. AI doesn't help with that. I still have to go edit, and that's something that I do. I think everybody pretty much does completely without an AI assist. There's new features when it comes to editing. It can make it a little bit more efficient, but when it comes to the creativity aspect of it, that's still all human. However, I have, I'm not a computer scientist. I have no idea, where this will go, how it's gonna evolve, and it may become something that can encapsulate all that and do more creative tasks. I'm not one to say, and I frankly I wouldn't be surprised because, th this was only really brought to light maybe 4 years ago when ChatGPT released, I think even less than that, and it's already almost. It's nothing like it was when it first came out. So who's to say what it will and won't be able to do, 2 or 3 years from now?
Um, with all the stuff you're doing, and I'm always curious about this because I interact and I mentor students, and I'm always interested in your balancing all the stuff you're doing, the broadcasting, the journalism, your studies in finance and accounting. Is everything is cool with the balancing of all this for you?
Yeah, personally, it's wonderful because I just need something to do all day. I don't like sitting around and really like relaxing or doing nothing. It's cool once in a while, but I just get so bored. So when I have something that I can do, and I wake up, and I'll go to class, and then maybe I'll be working a production for the radio show, for the student radio, and then maybe there's something I have to do for the basketball team, and then I have some homework to get done. And all of a sudden, the day has gone by, and I was out and about and, being active all day. That'll make me, feel really good. It makes me feel accomplished, and it makes the time pass in a way that makes me feel, you know, really fulfilled and active. And it's a lot easier to do because I feel like everything that I do and my work is either something that I am very passionate about or something where I feel like I am, building and investing in my future. So it's very easy for me to have the motivation to get up and go do that. And I love it. I love the busyness of it. I love the hustle, and it's something that keeps me very, entertained.
By the way, I'm gonna throw out a compliment to you. Sometimes as I'm listening to you, um, I'm not processing that you're 19 years old. I'm saying to myself, I talk to myself even while I'm interviewing you. I say, Calvin, he's really 40. So what I'm saying by that is you're grounded, you're worldly, you're mature, and you're speaking way above your age. And sometimes I pinch myself under the counter here. I said, am I talking to a 19-year-old? I mean, seriously. So that's a huge compliment. And I take that in my interaction with you and I project it onto the big screen And I'm saying, if your generation is like you, then there's not a lot of stuff to worry about. Uh, and I'm really serious about that. So I just paid you a really nice compliment. And I've been around the block, and I've been around the block, and I'm experienced in the world of people, and it's been kind of a thrilling thing to listen and to watch you talk and evolve just here. So anyway, I had to say that. Uh, I don't want it to swell your head, but I call it as I see it. So, as we're winding down, where do you see yourself, Caden, in 5 years? I mean, I know you're studying, accounting and finance and stuff. And where do you see yourself in 5 years? You're going to do stuff in broadcasting, film, journalism, photography, all of the above, none of the above.
Well, first off, thank you. Um, but here's I want to talk a little bit about what I see in the future of the media space to give my answer a little bit more context. I talked earlier about, how everything is transforming from TV to the phone, and, with that comes a change in what's necessary when it comes to production quality. What I film with when I'm working is my phone, like you mentioned, and what a lot of these videos that you're seeing on your feed are filmed in the exact same way. And what that means is there's less need for a 20-man production crew when it comes to that type of stuff. And all of a sudden, it's one person with their phone running around and capturing it, which means, in that scenario, 19 people now don't have a job. And, I've had a lot of, I'm lucky enough to have a lot of mentors in the space that I talk to regularly and give me advice. And unfortunately, I've personally witnessed a few of them get laid off over these past few years because the media industry is changing, and it's changing in a way that also shrinks it. It doesn't need as many people working there, and that's something, as a person in college that, would like a job when I graduate is very scary. So when you see the need shrinking, and with that comes a decrease in salary, an increase in hours worked and responsibility and what's expected of people, it's going to push people, and myself included, and a lot of other people that have the talent to put out some really great content. It's going to push them away from pursuing media as a full-time profession. And, because of that, and because of what I've seen happen to these people, it's something that I've decided not to pursue, you know, in its entirety. I think another thing is I'm so passionate about this, and I love doing it. And I don't know how that would change if, I was forced into a position where maybe I was working, like I said, longer hours for not that much money, and doing work that, may not be getting seen by a whole lot of people. So, I don't ever want to kill my love for this by, putting myself in any sort of position where I feel like that's likely. Yeah, I always want to do something related to this. I love it. Like I said, it drives me. Um, However, professionally, I don't know as much. I'd love to keep doing local media coverage for as long as I can. That's something that brings me so much joy, and like I said, it brings people together. Um, and that's something I want to stick with for like as long as I'm able to. But professionally, like you mentioned, I'm a finance and accounting major at Rutgers. That's also something I'm interested in. I've always been weirdly into the finance world. I watched Shark Tank when I was like
Oh,
5 years old.
wow.
That was the first thing. And that's kind of where I see myself going professionally. But I know, I'm a storyteller. That's something I love to do, and that's something continue to do it, may just not be at a full-time, professional level.
Okay. Last thing, it's always, by the way, very astute, and all I can throw on to what you just said is, I think before he went on air, I told you about Mustafa Amar, who I became really friendly with, and we met, and he's written three books, and his latest book is kind of addressed to you guys, your generation, that you know the way the world is changing, and I keep saying it's changing. When I grew up, the world was changing every 10 years. You know, in 1960, you know, somebody said, "Hey, you know, they're going to put a man on the moon." Yeah, right. Well, 10 years later, they put a man on the moon. So, you know, my world, every 10 years, but in the world today, I see everything changing every 15 minutes. So, to add on to what you just said and stuff, it might be wise for your generation to have your fingers and hands on different things for you to do. And the fact that you're now so diversified in what you've done with media and journalism, in addition to finance and accounting, just puts you into a great place. And even without forethought, you're doing this as a natural flow. And so I think that's really wise. So last question of the year, actually. It's the last question of the year that I'm asking. It's funny, I didn't realize that, but it's true. Uh, do you have any advice for, you know, young folks coming up and who maybe want to break into media and maybe want to do different things when they get to college, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely. I think the struggle for a lot of people when they're first starting out is finding opportunities and just getting a chance to work and showcase themselves. So I really think the key, and I wish I knew this earlier too, is you gotta kind of at one ask, and you also have to make opportunities happen for yourself. If you're in high school and your school has a sports team, like I said, unfortunately mine didn't. But if your school has a sports team, ask, hey, can I broadcast? Can I call your games? All you need, I did a West New York's baseball my junior year of high school, and I didn't have any equipment. What I brought was a tripod stand that held my phone, and I put an AirPod in as my microphone, and I called the games just like that. The view wasn't great, so I did a radio call so everyone could understand what was going on. But if you come to these teams that don't get media coverage and you offer them a chance to get their team out there, odds are they're going to say yes. And you can even expand beyond that and do what I did and do a county-oriented show where you're almost like the county-wide broadcasters, and you choose, you look at the schedule, you find the games that are going to work and look for opportunities there. Obviously, college students have their student radio. That's a very straightforward way to get involved and usually get a chance to cover some really cool high profile matchups, especially when it comes to Rutgers. Um, and then there's ways to get involved with these teams directly. There's a sports information director for every sport at every college. And usually, they're always looking for help. And if you're willing to, you know, work for free and put the time in and invest yourself into these teams or into calling games, you'll find opportunities exist, you know,
Mhm.
almost anywhere. You just have to look at places that might not be getting the coverage. And you're still able to find very cool sports. Like I said, Hudson County basketball didn't have much coverage, but it's still very entertaining, very competitive basketball with a very, as you mentioned, storied history. And we've watched some players go from games we've called to now, I'll mention one. Todd Pettiford played in the Final Four last year, and I called his games during high school.
Wow. Wow.
And it was just how it was because we were the people that were willing to set up cameras and put in the work and go do it. So there's always, opportunities that you can create for yourself if you're willing to reach out, if you're willing to send emails to people and go talk to them and really offer them something where they get the benefit and you get the experience. And that's how you start building a resume, and then you meet people there, and that hopefully, causes a snowball effect where you build a network and opportunities kind of create themselves.
You said, by the way, I don't know if you see, I've been taking notes on you. I'm a note taker. I became a great note taker when I was at Rutgers. And you said a powerful three-letter word, ask. Ask. If you don't ask, you'll never know. Ask. And asking opens up doors. That's what you said. And for a 19-year-old to even come up with that concept and advice, because that's what you're doing here, you're giving advice, saying ask is profound stuff, Caden. And that's a great way to do a wrap. This was, hey, I'm so glad we chatted at the Student Center in November and met and now exploring things to do and now spending some time with you, very valuable time. Because again, I love the whole process for me to give back and the stuff I've learned and to open up doors and the whole networking thing. My exuberance and my love of Rutgers, and the fact that I started everything at my whole journey with Rutgers began 30 years ago when my son was 10 and he wasn't a sports kid. And I was looking for ways to bond with my son. I was a basketball player and stuff, and I finally I got the great idea of maybe I'll take my 10-year-old son to a football game at Rutgers. And that little innocent thing led to a whole new life for my son and I. He loved it, and he said, "Let's do it again." The following year, I got season tickets for everything. I mean, everything, and that began the bonding with my son. And then it also introduced me to Rutgers because I went to Rutgers Newark, and I had a shot at playing basketball for Rutgers Newark, but it was different. There just wasn't a stadium and stuff. So now that I'm close to New Brunswick, I started to explore New Brunswick. And within a few years after that, 10 years ago, I found myself on campus 150 times a year. And I was doing everything under the sun. And eventually that led to my teaching. So going to a football game literally led to my teaching at Rutgers. And one of the things I taught was networking, how important that is. And part of networking is that amazing word you said, ask. Ask. Great word. So, Caden, thank you, thank you, thank you for your time and for your energy and for your passion. And we're brothers in Scarlet Knight stuff. Um, and hopefully you can come back. You can put together whatever you want to put together, panels, and we can talk about stuff and things. And I'm always here. And so I'm wishing you, even though this will air on January 14th, I'm wishing you a happy, healthy, wonderful new year and all good things.
Well, you as well, Calvin. I had a great time
Yeah.
coming on. Looking forward to doing this again.
Yep. Would love it, love it, love it. So don't leave. I'm just going to stop recording and we'll do a 2-minute wrap. Boom. Thank you, Caden. Go are
There we
you.
go.
Go are you.